Welcome back, Crew Cat. It is episode 6 of the Crew Corner podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm AJ.
And we are here to give our final thoughts and the final word on the Crew SC versus New York City FC and preview our upcoming match against Seattle Sounders. So, AJ, you were in the Nordeck. How was it out there?
It was great. It was wonderful to be back in the stadium, back in the stands with everybody. My wife, along with a couple dozen other people, got fairly bad windburn and sunburn. It was quite breezy in the stands this game, which is nice. There's an old thing about Mapfre Stadium being its own microclimate, and it was a beautiful day in Columbus, and it was an incredibly windy and bright day at Mapfre, so that was awesome.
It was. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the match from the comforts of my own home.
Was there a shadow on the field? I can never tell from our corner.
There is a shadow on the field. Like, it is a very mild shadow on the field.
That always upsets me. Like, I see EPL games where you're like, I have no idea what's going on in that box because there are, 22 shadowy people wandering around in that box in a shadow.
Just seeing what is going on. So, I mean, what were your takes from the match that you saw there?
We picked up in a really interesting pattern of play, and we'll talk more about it probably, but 90% of it was as a result of that red card. I mean, Vito and Jonathan Mensah were both in the box at times. We were all the way up into their box at multiple points of the game.
From watching the game on TV, it became very obvious very quickly. Like, both teams' game plans just went out the window as soon as that red card happened. Like, whatever you planned to have happen just disappeared after that.
And then as a result of that, the game got really chippy, and there should have been a couple of other red card situations. Some people will argue that some of them were not really fouls. Like there are people that will argue that it's not a red card to kick a guy in the back of the heel, but it is by the rule of the law. Could that have been a yellow card? Maybe. Him getting sent off, do I think that's a hell of a statement to make in the second minute of the game? Yeah. But, I mean, almost immediately after that, Wormhorn picked up a card. Pedro picked up a card in probably my least favorite way. We need to grow up a little. He got a card for cursing at the ref. Yes, that's technically dissension, but he cursed at the ref. He said, are you effing kidding me? And I think I couldn't tell if he was saying it in Portuguese or if he was saying it in English because we were far enough back that we couldn't really hear it, but there's a very strong F movement, and then all of a sudden the center referee comes running over and shows the card to him, and then he just kind of looks at the center referee like he just kicked a dog. Like, it was bad.
I've noticed the referees are much more non-tolerant of BS than they are on the European continent. Like, they can still book you for dissent on the European continent, but chances are they're not going to.
I mean, Pipa used to pick up dissent cards all the time. There was a great one where he, I think it was 2 years ago, where he mocked a referee for the amount of the white foam, the like little chalk foam they do for a free kick, like where the spot was, and he made like a pile, like he was topping an ice cream sundae, and Pipa just kind of was like, "What are you doing?" And he kicked the foam over, and because it's sitting right in front of the ball, and the ref is like, "You can't move the foam," and Pipa was like, "You're terrible at your job," and he gave him a yellow card for dissent. Like, you're bad at spraying that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those, like, the Wormhor penalty, or what penalty? The Wormhor foul was definitely a foul. It was a dangerous play. When you go sliding in like that against a guy who's only on one leg.
But he hit the ball. That's the thing, is driving into the ball. I think what Wormhor will have a situation, and this will be the first situation of it, where his style of play, like I've talked about in the past, is very aggressive. You look at any highlight video of him, and 90% of those, really solid tackles that are set to the flight of the Valkyrie in MLS would be a red or a solid yellow.
Yeah, it's absolutely what he was brought in to do.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to live with that. If we get an occasional yellow card and possibly a red, I'm already accounting for like one red for him this season, just one straight flat red. He gets a one freebie in my book, just no questions asked. Just gets it. Just gets it.
And that will be with 4 of them on yellow cards. I bet, and they are 4 of the biggest risks of us picking up additional yellows. It's Awful, who went down multiple times over the last 3 years with yellow card accumulation. It's Wormhor, who's he's a very aggressive player. It's Pedro, who will go in for a tackle, or he'll embellish something. Maybe there'll be a situation where he makes contact, or there's dissent. His job is to draw fouls to him or to against another team.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I was talking to some of the fans after the game, and there still seems to be this. I don't know. I think Pedro Santos is one of the most misunderstood players on this team. Like he's there to draw, especially in a match against 10 men. Like I look at going down and drawing fouls as something that is effectively part of the game in the same way that an NBA player would go try to draw a foul to get a free throw.
And there are players on the European continent that are known for our purveyors of the dark arts, whether that's them committing a tiny foul that nobody notices, or that's them drawing a foul and embellishing a little bit. There's a little bit of flopping that's associated with Pedro, and some people don't like that. They want you can hear that in the stands. He'll go down after a tackle, and regardless of how hard it is, people will scream, "Get up! Stop faking it, Pedro!" And we've never really in the last couple of years, we haven't had a player whose job it is to do that, and it's one of those things that you sort of learn how to do fairly well. Mbappe does it. Neymar Jr. The problem is those players get a bad name because they'll embellish a lot, and you'll get situations where a player will get booked for flopping and get a bad reputation for it, and as a result, they'll something could happen to them. Like in the playoffs, in 20, I think it was 27, Pedro's first year, 2017. He got tackled really hard, and automatically everybody's like, "Oh, he's faking it," but he got off. Some of us met him at the airport, and he got off the plane with a crutch and a walking boot on, and he was limping around. Like there's bad situations where he didn't get a foul called for it because I think the refs automatically assumed that he was faking it.
So for those of you watching right now, we're filming in the basement studio, and whenever AJ moves his arm, it casts a shadow along the back wall, and our dog sees that. This is assistant producer Loki back here, and he will see the shadow on the back wall and immediately think it is something that he has to go after. So this is going to be one of the more interesting podcasts that we do with the dog fighting in the background for this entire
He's
thing.
shadowboxing.
Yeah, he's shadowboxing, and now he is digging away at my couch. Come on. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. He's okay. Yeah, he likes to dig and run up everything. But that's okay. That's why we love him. He's our assistant producer. Circling back to Pedro, though, I think at least for Sunday's game, it was a wise move. If for no other reason than when you're playing against 10 men, like I would figure you have a much greater advantage in a set piece situation against 10 men than you would in an open play situation against 10 men. Unfortunately, none of them really came to fruition, which again, I'm going to keep hammering on this, is that it's coming back to chemistry, and some more chemistry, that this team just simply hasn't played together for very long.
And I think some of it's like there's one thing that I really sort of despise that we do, and we've done it for years, and I see other teams doing it. It just feels weird to me why we have the second player against the corner for a corner kick. I know it's to read the defensive
The short
screen
corner.
and see, you do a short corner and then you try to cross it in. But if you're up a man, why would you pull a player off to the side?
Exactly.
Why would you have only 9 in the box when they have 9? Why not have the numerical advantage?
Yeah, and then of course, again, circling the Chanot red card, defensively as far as our organization, New York had their moments, even with 10 men, they had their moments where I'm like, are they going to score here?
And that came down to some really incredible play. Artur and Jonathan Mensah and Vitor had these amazing moments where they got in between the ball and, just it was like, I think you said something about it was like watching somebody play FIFA or Lucas plays like most people play FIFA.
Lucas plays soccer the way I play FIFA, which is you just basically dribble to the right as fast as you can and hope you can get past someone you probably doesn't. And then I'm surprised, oh, I totally thought I was going to beat him. And then I don't. And then I'm looking around for an outlet pass as defenders just converge upon me. And you just hope you can find that outlet pass before one of them steals the ball from you. Or you just kind of cut around it and go for the goal like he did with the goal in the game. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those this year. He's going to have some moments where these goals just pop up out of nowhere and you never see him coming.
He's and I guess we should talk about that is the one goal. There were other scoring opportunities that, the Diaz miss is still will probably haunt him for a little while.
Oh my gosh, that was so bad.
There was a visceral reaction in the stands to that. It was very much of oh my God, how did you miss that?
Yeah, because it was a wide open net. It was an absolutely wide open net and just completely missed it.
And that goes back to my question of, do we need to hire a finishing coach? That's
possibly, because I think, there were some moments like that little, I think in the first half, the little lob ball from Mokhtar to Jassi.
Oh, yeah.
Jassi didn't quite get to it, but the lob and just the thought, which was right on the money. And that's what I'm saying. The strategy is there. The players are bought in. They're all doing the right thing. They're all in the right place.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of time and possibly coaching for them to be able to hammer the rest of that out.
And I think some of that will come from, we need somebody to really step forward. It's not even a leadership thing. There needs to be somebody who isn't just the captain. There needs to be somebody that is directing play, that is, and we saw that a lot of that in Darlington Nagbe. It's why he was brought in. He was doing these turns that weren't even Cruyff turns. They were very different. Like a Cruyff turn, the ball stays where it was, and you turn around the ball and change direction. He was changing direction at such a quick rate that he's kind of leaving defenders in the dust, and he's in incredible positions on the corner of the box where you're like, okay, and this is the opportunity. This is the short pass here, and then Pedro or Lucas can score, right? Okay, but then it doesn't happen. What's not happening to keep them, what's preventing them from scoring in those situations? What's going to be the situation where we need to, where they need to figure out why is the ball not going in? Why are we not going into a position that?
Right, and this game, to me, was mildly disappointing, only in the sense that we didn't learn anything.
Yeah,
we learned nothing. We learned nothing about this team.
I think what we learned was that it is still a fresh team. It's we saw a lot of that in the way they used their substitution. It was incredible to see the substitutions. One of the things that we learned is that Caleb has still not learned his lesson about timing when it comes to using his changes. He pulled. Yeah, I mean, when he put Chris Cadden in, it was the 88th minute. Like, that was, my wife is very sad because she is a Scottish girl, and he has a lovely brogue, such beautiful speaking voice.
When you can understand it.
Well, yes, that's the point, is you can barely understand it, and my wife sort of loves it. But, 88th minute, like, why, okay, there's 4 minutes of extra time going to be added to it. So he's on the field for 6 minutes. We should be really changing for fresher legs earlier. Yeah, we're 1 up. Okay. Is a defensive midfielder tired? Okay, then we need to put Cadden in to take the place of Artur or...
Yeah, Artur played much longer than I thought
Artur
he would.
Played the whole game.
He played much longer than I thought he would in this one.
So did Milton Valenzuela. Milton Valenzuela played 90, I think it was 97 minutes total because of extra time on both the first and second half. He played the whole game. You could not tell that young man's knee was reconstructed from scratch. He has a dead man's knee in him, and it is apparently a knee made for running.
Yeah, and even he had some really nice clearances in the box. Again,
he's also huge now. Like he got big during
rehab. He put on some weight during rehab, and he's going to be a force. And I know I sound like I'm very tapered, but I am very excited about this team with what they're going to bring to the table, because you see the talent there. Like, Yunus Mokhtar was a very, very pleasant surprise on Sunday.
I didn't think he would start. Every setup I had figured, especially listening to the way that Caleb talks about him, I thought Diaz was going to start. I thought it was going to be Pedro on the left, Diaz on the right, Lucas in the center. I was shocked when I heard it was going to be Yunus Mokhtar on the left.
To be fair, I did hear that that Luis picked up a little bit of a hip flexor, so that's why he was on the bench. But then when he came on, it was like he came on to do the exact thing you want a Luis Diaz to do. Right. Especially if you're coming against a 10-man team that is dog-tired in the 70th minute, and you're just blowing past people and getting a big, wide, open shot on net that you scuffed.
I was shocked that they pulled Jossie. That the substitutions were for Jossie, for Lucas, and for Yunus Mokhtar. That we pulled. Are we sort of playing a double duty on forward, where we're having Fernando Adi come in for Jossie in the 70th minute? Is that a permanent tactic? Because all you're doing is doing like for like.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. We don't have a tall target striker anymore. We've gotten rid of all of them. Adam John is in Atlanta, where he'll probably be starting games, and that's a different discussion that we'll get into in a second. But all of our strikers are short, fast strikers, or poachers now.
Giassi's got some height on him, but again,
he does have height.
He's not a
6 foot. He's not a Zlatan 6 foot.
Yeah, he's more of a power pace guy than leap through the air kind of guy. I also noticed this as they were going through the starting lineup. Giassi's artist is the only American in our starting 11.
Yeah.
Well, Darlington. Well,
yeah.
He's technically from...
He's from Columbus.
He's from Columbus.
Or Lakeview. Sorry.
Yeah, and he does play for the U.S., so I stand corrected on that. Point withdrawn.
But no, you are correct that we had 9 foreign-born players. Most of them have green cards. I think the only ones that don't have green cards right now were
probably
Lucas and Yunus Mokhtar, I think, are the only ones.
And I don't see this as a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
We're using all of our international spots. I think we have 2 left over.
Yeah, I just look at it and I'm like, oh, huh.
Artur has a green card because he was doing the paperwork, and then he got married. So, that helps. Jonathan Mensah got his green card a while back, and then he got married. So everybody has a means of staying here. I think Pedro Santos just has a visa. Like, he's still keeping his Portuguese citizenship and all that.
And then that and the other big thing is, when the club's rich and it's got money, They find ways around that stuff.
And that's going to actually be an interesting thing because later, and since we're in the month of March now, later in the month of March, we have a U.S. Open game. And you can only have, I think it's 5 foreign-born starting players. So we're going to see, we're going to have to see some of these players. Like, I imagine we're not going to have Artur or Nagbe starting in defensive mid.
No, we're going to have one of the kids.
Yeah.
We're going to have one, or if not both of the kids in Aiden Morris and Sebastian Berhalter.
And either one of them can play more of like a attacking central mid, so that's cool if you want to keep Darlington or Artur, because they do have visas, they do have green cards, they've been given citizenship. But, more than likely we won't see, our wings we only have one American-born wing in Derek Etienne. So, that was something that I was kind of...
Who didn't even see the field on Sunday.
Which I'm kind of, that's upsetting. But
yeah, I know you're probably more mildly disappointed in that.
I'm disappointed, but it was
am.
interesting to see the on Monday there was a scrimmage with them and
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the Riverhounds. You are correct, and he scored a brace.
I mean, the dude can play. He's definitely going to be one.
But it's good to see that they're actually doing scrimmages with, proper quality challenges. Like, yeah, inter squad scrimmages are wonderful, but you need to be
playing against actual opposition
who are actually trying. You can't, inter squad scrimmages the day after a game are typically fairly, one-sided because you don't have somebody wanting to risk, like, you're not risking Luis Diaz or Yunus Mokhtar or Pedro on a Monday morning.
Precisely. And, I mean, circling back to Mokhtar, I mean, he was a pleasant surprise for me. I mean, I did not realize until today, like, he is quite the physical presence in that 18-yard box and getting in there. And I think as long as you pair him with either Valenzuela or Offal, who's sort of more of a speed agility type player.
He is not a fast player.
As long as you pair him with one of those guys, he's gonna. I wouldn't pair him up with Catton. I think Catton is another one of those physical presences.
Catton's a big, solid dude.
Yeah, I mean, but as long as you keep him with either of our two currently starting backs, I think you'll be fine with him there. And then you bring on Diaz in the 60th to 70th minute to just run people into the ground after that.
Which is a kind of upsetting that we're spending so much money on Diaz, and we used the international spots for him, and we're using a young DP. And we're talking about a Costa Rican national team player who we will probably have to release for the Olympics, qualifying in a couple of weeks. And, this is a player who will, come October we'll have to release for World Cup qualification. We're really going to have an interesting situation where, towards the end of the season when we're trying to get into the playoffs, we're going to have a couple of players where it's, hey, how much, where a national team coach will make a phone call to Caleb and be like, hey, can you not play my player for a couple of days? Like, I need him at 100% to get on an airplane to go play in Mexico to qualify for the Olympics. We don't have a huge amount of U.S. national team players that are going to have that, and all of the talking heads in sports are saying that it's not Jossie that's going to go into qualification. I think it is because I don't see Jose Altidore surviving the whole season to be able to...
When has he ever done that?
Yeah, he hasn't.
Not to mention, is he Greg Berhalter's favorite player? No, he's not. Giassi Zardes is Greg Berhalter's favorite player.
And there are so many people that don't really understand it. Unless the only player I could see really taking a step forward in that is if Josh Sargent or Sebastian Soto, who are very similar players to Giassi, suddenly have amazing seasons. So yeah, we're going to have to figure out how to play with Fernando Adi all the time. And maybe that is the situation, like I said, exchanging like for like, and we're having Adi come on for Jossie and play in the exact same way.
I think that is definitely one of the reasons they brought him in. It's because Caleb just knew we're going to be losing Jossie to the national team a fair amount of the time. And for whatever reason, MLS is the only league that decides, hey, we're not going to take an international break.
They are taking better international breaks, but they are much shorter. Like, nobody has to. It's not an official FIFA thing for Olympic qualifying. So depending on how the Olympic teams are being set up. So like, the Great Britain team for the Olympics is England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland.
Yeah, they're the UK team.
They're the UK team. So you get a situation where, like, depending on how good Chris Cadden plays, does he get called up? And it's only a 22-man roster.
That, and I think Cadden is safe because it is a U23 side, and I think he just turned 23. Yeah. So possibly he still gets into it. Plus, I don't know. I mean, I just think there are other, and all the Scots could be mad at me. There are English right backs who are better. But I think he's going to be fine. And the game itself, it just sucked because we didn't learn anything about the team. The defense never really saw any sustained pressure, and it's when you go against sustained pressure, and that's when it really tests your organizational skills.
We did learn how the defense adjusts to some long goal kicks, which is really nice because Sean Johnson was trying to kick it down the field and have their players hoof it to try to beat, because we were very far forward up the field.
Yeah, that's the only option they had. The only option they had to generate any offense was on either just over the press or on the counterattack. That's the only options that they really had, and they got us on that counterattack a few times.
And we got very lucky that there was some EA FIFA style, like, I'm just going to randomly slide and hope that I block this ball into my stomach. Oh, good, it didn't hit my arm.
Yeah, we there was a good handful of that. I mean, make no mistake about it, New York City is good, even with 10 guys. Yeah. Like, they showed why they're the best team. They were the best team in the East. Yes, I know Toronto won it. Regular season still matters in my book for whatever reason. But they won the East. They were the best team out of that side of the country, and it showed It showed on Sunday.
They did not look tired from CCL. So
no.
That is going to be a bad thing for the rest of the league. If they continue to play really well in CCL, New York is going to be one of those teams that it's really good that we got the 3 points from them now.
And having said that, though, like, I gotta say, as we head out to Seattle this week, the team heads out to Seattle. I'll be staying here and watching the game at Endeavor with you guys. But as they head out to Seattle, I mean, Seattle went out there, and yeah, it was Chicago Fire. That team's a mess, but they looked hella good at home playing against Chicago Fire. And I see a tough one. I see a tough one coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those times where I'm really glad that we let some of the reserve players get some real practice time this week, because I don't know how this team is going to do on like a 6-day turnaround. And that will be one of those things that we look at. We traditionally have had a hard time flying out to the West Coast to play some of these teams at home.
Yeah, and I do know they're flying. They will be flying out when this podcast airs on Thursday, so they will to deal with the jet lag. Plus, I mean, not to mention all the coronavirus outbreaks or people have been in Washington, so God knows what's going to happen there. They just canceled all of the attendances for the Arnold Sports Expo stuff. So, I mean, say what you want about the severity of it. I mean, it is something that, everybody is taking seriously.
Right, and there's talk of canceling Emerald City Con, which is one of the largest nerd conventions in the country. So, the people of Seattle are taking it seriously. Seattle, one of the things is they have one of the largest stadiums. So if you have 45,000 people at that game, it'll be a very interesting it'll be interesting to see what the attendance is on that game. But on the field, it will be one of those things where, what's the lineup? Do we keep the same starting 11 that we had? Like, how bad? I haven't seen anything about Wormgore's injury. He had I don't know if it was a knee to foot or a foot to foot, but it was very audible towards the end of the game where he went down. He was down for a solid couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was wasting time because the moment he hit the ground, he was already flagging.
Yeah, it was one of those where like he hit the ground, his knee bent, and then he fell backwards.
Yeah, it was.
And like I see that, like you see that in football all the time with offensive linemen, and you just look at that and like that's a torn ACL. That's a torn ACL right there. See ya. So to see him like literally get up and walk off under his own power within minutes, like you don't do that if it's torn. That's something they stabilize and cart you off on. So that was good to see. But yeah, it was definitely a tweak. I would not be surprised if he's not starting. I'm not sure who they would put in place at that point.
If you're going size for size, do we do Josh is about the same size as him? Do we do oh crud, I just forgot the name of our other center back. Our 6'7",
the big one.
Yeah. Whose name escapes
me?
I apologize.
It's escaping me right now too. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see that. I do expect Diaz to start this match. Because I think
over
Mokhtar.
Okay.
Because I think Caleb's goal this year is just to run teams into the ground, and then bring on the bench.
Yeah.
With the fresh legs, get your goal in the in that 77th minute, and win games 1-0. Because what you saw from this defense, even though they're still getting organized, is they can all play. They can all recover, and they can all make plays. We have a very, very athletic defense. And a lot of teams can't say that. They have stalwarts, but they don't have a lot of athletes all the time.
And that's where, it was weird to see Wormhor could have had a couple of goal opportunities.
Yeah, with Wormhor was, and I mentioned this on one of the comments on the Upon Further Review video, was that Wormhor he is an absolute beast, number one. And two, he is deceptively good with the ball at his feet.
I mean, I
think he will be the signing of this season.
Yeah.
For all the love for Lucas, I think the signing of this season is going to be Vito Wormhor for this team.
And you'll see, that was the more interesting thing is if you look at any highlight video for him from the Eredivisie when he was still playing for Ajax, there are as many good tackles on any of those as there are just outside goals. He doesn't, it's not one of those things like we had with Gaston Sarro last year where, he headed a goal in off the back of his head and, oh my gosh, it's such a surprise. He scored. Oh, it's so wonderful. This will be a very deliberate, I imagine every goal we get this season is deliberate.
Yeah,
not an accident.
Yeah, and that's really all you can hope for as a coach, fan, and player is that everything turns out and it works as planned as opposed to off of caroms or off of crazy stuff. You don't. Even though I do think it's a relatively winning strategy, you don't want to be a set piece team. You know what I mean? You don't want to be the team whose game plan is to draw fouls and nick one off of a set piece. But I do think this is going to be a heavily defensive and counterattack based team once you get Diaz in there. With Mokhtar, you can play a little bit more through the middle and play out of the back. But I think once you get Diaz's pace in there, combining that with Lucas's pace as well, we're going to see a lot more long balls.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we will be looking for, particularly out of Seattle, is Seattle has a much stronger midfield situation. So how are we reacting to a situation where, maybe there's 5 in the middle that are all a scoring threat. They're all Seattle doesn't really do the defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
They're a lot of the games they won, and particularly the MLS Cup, came from situations where they had a center midfielder who was they essentially had like a deeper line, two deeper line attacking midfielders.
Yeah, they basically had like a center mid, a center attacking mid, and two wingers.
Yeah.
They just trusted their defense, and that says a lot about their defense too, about their back four, that they can do that.
It will be interesting to see how their back four looks. It'll be they've got all new center backs. This
Yeah,
year.
I have not watched all. The only thing I've really watched from Seattle this year was the highlights of their Chicago match, and I got to tell you, at least on the goals they scored, they looked like they were in control the whole time. I mean, this team is for real, and I don't know. Even with the three is a good start. I think 9 points from this first five that's going to be successful for this team if they can get 9 out of the first five between. Because after Seattle, they have I think Real Salt Lake, Nashville, and then Toronto.
Right, and I think Nashville will be.
You think Nashville will come back to earth this week?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Nashville will be a really interesting situation. We're doing some community outreach with that. Their away fans, the fans from Columbus that are going to Nashville are going to be, and there's a lot of them. There's supposedly over 200 away fan sales, which is great. It just means that the front office has to go with. They typically don't have to go with. I was just at the stadium, and they were.
Make sure you guys stay on your leashes.
Yes, they were. Which I'm not going because I'm moving that week. Yay! But it'll be a really interesting thing. I don't know if everybody saw, but David Accab put up a video. His apartment in Nashville got torn up. His windows are all blown out. His blinds are all over the place. There's a lot of damage put towards a lot of people, which is that's you never want to see that, and I'm sure everybody's hearts are going out towards Nashville, but it'll be a really interesting thing to see how much that affects their team over the next 2 weeks.
I think it's. I mean, if you look at what happened in Houston with Harvey, just the way that town really rallied around their team, you're looking at a possibility of that.
It'll be interesting to see what their attendance is, considering everybody was so happy about how much it was that it was at the NFL stadium and they had so many people there.
They had 60,000 people there.
But how much of that was Atlanta? How much of that was that it was, shiny and new?
Yeah, shiny, new, playing the champions. It certainly merits consideration for it. I think now that you're going to see. I always kind of think of things with like a little bit of a business mindset from more of a PR mindset
Right.
than a business mindset. They could very easily do like, I wouldn't say free admission, but like free food for if you've been displaced or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
just, come in and do that. And I mean, I've got a ton of musician friends down in Nashville now who are like, yeah, my apartment's, I need to find a job since my job is now rubble.
Yeah. And, I mean, Nashville's had those situations in the past. There's a river that goes through Nashville whose name I completely forgot. But there was a huge musician storage area. It was they store all of this equipment when all these tours go on. And that's what I used to do for a living, is I used to work as a roadie and as a local stagehand. And we had to send, when I was a local stagehand, we sent union dues down to them because they lost storage units where, Johnny Cash's amps got destroyed and some of Elvis's guitars got destroyed, and there was, I think it was Panic at the Disco or something, lost all of their drum equipment. Nashville has these situations, and luckily the greater community is able to reach out and help each other.
Yeah, I mean, it is, if you guys haven't seen the videos and photos from out of Nashville, I mean, a tornado straight up tore through downtown Nashville.
Yeah.
Like just imagine a tornado just plowing through downtown Columbus. Like, that actually happened.
Yeah. But, back to on the field, when it comes to Seattle and Salt Lake and Nashville, we're having our West Coast run right now. These teams we're only getting one shot at. So it will be one of those situations where we're really pushing against them and we're really hoping to get 3 points from them because we don't get another opportunity at them. And the Western Division is going to
The West is so
they're
tough.
going to eat each other so hard this year that it's going to be so aggressively violent in terms of the standings. But one of the good things is that Caleb Porter is our head coach, and as he's even admitted it himself, he kind of crowed a little and perked up about the fact that he is one of the most hated men in Seattle.
He is. He is one of the most hated men in Seattle. They do not forget.
And I liked seeing at the end of the game. Yeah, he had his daughter with him, but I liked seeing a little bit of the Caleb when Caleb came over to the Nordeca before the players came over. He did his usual little thumbs up, and then he kind of rushed towards us and did like a double fist pump and a little bit of that aggressive Caleb that's been tempered by the league and getting fines and all that has.
It's still there.
It's still there.
But he likes working and he likes money like the rest of us do.
Yeah, it'll be what I will actually enjoy seeing. Speaking of this, is I can't wait for us to play New England because he and Bruce Arena hate the hell out of each other.
And what's the story? Why do they hate each other?
I have no idea, but there's a great gif of him telling Bruce Arena to F off.
So if any of you out there know the story or the history behind the feud of Caleb Porter and Bruce Arena, please hit us up on Facebook, send us an email, hit us up on Twitter. This is something I am genuinely interested in finding out more about. Because I am also and not that big a fan of Bruce Arena for a myriad of other reasons, mainly that he failed to beat Honduras or was it Panama? Panama.
Yeah.
Failed to beat Panama and then blamed the field.
Yeah.
While your best players were on the bench. Don't know why. Not sure why he decided to do that. I'm not bitter. I'm just confused.
In general, my opinion on U.S. soccer is similar to what Jermaine Jones' opinion, and that's somebody is just, their heads just exploded on that, just hearing the words Jermaine Jones. I think that we have had some of the worst coaching in all of FIFA, in all the federations. The U.S. soccer has just in general been garbage.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with on that one. And we all, the worst part is like
over
we
the last
all
5 years.
The worst part is like we all see it.
Yeah.
We all see it, and like if we're not bright. I don't consider myself to be that smart. I still struggle with the X's and O's aspect of the game a fair amount. But even if I can look at it and be like something is wrong and this is not working, they have to be able to see it.
Yeah.
They have to be able to see it. And apparently now, like, the only thing that requires you to be a higher, above manager or higher at U.S. soccer is to want to permanently live in Chicago.
Yeah, that's a whole, that losing, suddenly a bunch of really good coaches being available because they said, screw you, I'm not moving from where I live. Why would I move to Chicago? There is no training facility there. Like, if you want everybody to move to Chicago, build a training facility.
Yeah, and it boggles
my simple.
It boggles my mind, and we could go on and on and on about the drain on U.S. soccer, but this is a cruise show. So something I did want to talk a little bit, or I know you wanted to talk a little bit about, is right now like Lucas Zelarayan fever is slowly taking over this town, and I would say as it well should. Andrew has a different take.
I worry that he is a little bit too much of a solo player for us. I worry that he doesn't trust all of his teammates. Because there were a couple of situations where I'm glad I was glad that I wasn't the only one yelling this. Where there were moments where it was just like, "Hey, Artur's about 4 yards behind you. Pass him the ball. Like he's got a clear shot. Why are you dribbling at somebody? Pass, pass." And you could hear these moments where people were like, "Pass, Artur! Oh my God, pass!" And the same situation that was wonderful and it was a goal, but
It was such a pretty goal.
it was
though.
such a pretty
It was
goal.
such
and
a
it was
pretty
a very
goal.
FIFA goal, but at the same time, it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, that could have been a pass too.
I know, but like those are the
I'm glad
goals.
it went in.
Those
I'm really
those
glad it
those
went
are
in.
the goals that get a million YouTube hits.
Yes.
And bring 3 new fans to the Crew because they saw how awesome that goal was.
That was a golazo. Like that was the true definition of Mexican golazo. It was you use technique to put a player off, and oh look, open shot, boom, goes in. Glad it went in. If we would be having a different conversation if he skied that.
Oh, we would absolutely be having a different conversation.
Everybody would be saying,
that.
"Oh my God, why is he such a selfish player?"
I don't know. I like I said, I think we've still got the novelty aspect to him. I think if he has a bad run, of form, we'll start asking that question.
I know Lucas doesn't listen to this, but if you have 3 games in a row in which you sky a ball that you should have passed, Crew fans will turn on you.
They will let you know because Twitter is a thing, and in your case, because we show up to the games, Twitter is real life.
Yeah, the same 3,000 people that exist on Twitter also exist in that field.
Now seems like a good time to remind everyone you can follow us on Twitter. I am at Matt Ramblers.
And I am Rat called AJ.
So be sure to give us all a follow, and you can stay up to date on that. We all have all sorts of fun thoughts and musings right now.
Typically, my musings are not fun. They're grumpy or lazy, or me saying or attempting to explain really complicated and dumb esoteric roster rules that involve money, and all the money is not real. It's all pretend.
Oh,
None of this is real.
Garber bucks.
Garber money.
Oh, Garber bucks. Do you think the league will ever do away with Garber bucks? I mean, I guess they won't now because they just signed a
Bob Bradley has actually been very vocal about this.
Of course, the LA teams would.
Well, no, Bob Bradley is a rabble rouser, and he has. I think he has the opinion that he has done enough in the soccer world to deserve to be a rabble rouser. I hate the hell out of his son, but I will agree with him on this.
I think he's a good manager. I think he's a very good manager.
Good manager, but I think one of the things he has brought forward is the idea, and it will, when you start hearing people talk about like the plan is 36 teams. Well, you're going to have teams that you never play then at all. Like, yes, it's one thing to have 2 teams that the Crew don't play from the West Coast.
And they just happen to be...
Or 3 teams, because we don't play San Jose, LA, and LA. That's one thing. But when we get up to 32, that's going to be different. If we go to 36 or 40, okay, go to 40. Have 2 divisions of 20. And have promotion and relegation if you really want, or have it one side like MLS Division 1 and you can call it the Hunt Division or whatever plays, and then the second one and it can be called the Siggy Division or whatever. You give them fun names, and the only time they play is MLS Championship. Have it like have it AFC NFC.
Well, the old American League, National League.
Yeah, have
baseball.
it old, and then eventually we'll probably end up with interleague play again. Or you have promotion and relegation. I know some tinfoil hat people all over the country just perked up because their spidey senses have gone off. But you can have that. And what Bob Bradley was saying is...
The idea that you can't have promotion and relegation in this country system is just ridiculous.
It goes into an antitrust thing that there's... Listen to a Cooligans podcast from a couple of years ago where a guy explained why promotion and relegation doesn't work and why the EPL would eliminate promotion and relegation if Man United was relegated. Like, If Man United was relegated to championship, they would eliminate promotion relegation that day.
Probably, but the people who are basically the people who are anti-promotion relegation are the people with the money.
Right.
They want to hold on to them.
But alternately, you get some of these, like you get Bob Bradley, you get Arthur Blank, you get some of these richer owners, and the same thing that happened in the time that MLS contracted is there were owners that wanted to be able to spend whatever they wanted, and they wanted to say like, hey, if you can't spend like us anymore, get the hell out.
You play to win the game,
right? And so Bob Bradley is saying that's what they want.
And that's what promotion relegation drives. It drives you play to win the game. You're not here to make money. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you are here. You are providing a service to these people.
A lot of money if they did that. That everybody would assume that if the EPL can have, if Man United can have $4 billion in revenue because they spend all this money and they have all this good time, fun time money, that they can do whatever they want, and that's true. So the idea is that LAFC and the Atlanta Uniteds and the Charlotte, oh my God, nobody realizes how much money the Charlotte owner has. He has enough money that he could buy every single team in this league and still be able to go on to a lovely vacation on a private island.
Oh, absolutely. And
so if you tell him, hey, but it's the old saying of like, there's nothing keeping Miami from buying Messi tomorrow. Well, it's okay. The first time a club goes, I'm going to pay $100 million transfer fee because I can. There's no financial fair play rules in the U.S. What's the arms race look like? What's the first time somebody goes, I am going to go for, Kylian Mbappe is one thing, but like, okay, what's to keep somebody from going Neymar?
Well, what was it?
$150 million transfer.
We just had one. I mean, it's not to this level, but I mean, Victor Wanyama's joining Impact de Montreal. Yeah, coming from Tottenham Hotspur, and they're doing.
But his transfer fee is nothing close to what. Like,
no, you're talking in probably the 20s.
Yeah,
for a player.
What happens
like that.
The first time Arthur Blank goes, hey, who's the most popular player in the world? That's say 22 years old.
Yeah, that would be like the Neymar or Mbappe. And I'm totally all right with keeping the salary cap. The big thing that I find ludicrous is that.
But they can play a designated player anything they want.
Teams don't negotiate their. Well, that's not. You can just drop the designated player, increase the salary cap for everything,
right?
And say like, look, if you basically say like, okay, teams, you negotiate your own transfer fees now. The idea that the league is coming in and says no, you negotiate the transfer fee with Don Garber, leaving Don. I don't trust Don Garber in charge of anything, let alone transfer fees.
It's kind of they try to go with the NBA model of like the leagues negotiate some transfer fees, but from reading what it seems like. It's more of the NBA model where they have the ability to say, no, you can't, like, no, Chicago Fire cannot spend $100 million to buy whoever. It's the thing of Higuain. When we had Federico Higuain, everybody was like, why can't we have Gonzalo? Why can't we? It's when he transferred, he was the most expensive transfer at one point in the history of UEFA. And he, how do you say to a player, oh, you just got a $90 million transfer from, was it AC Milan?
I think it was Juventus. No,
it was before Juventus. Whatever team he played on.
Napoli. It was Napoli.
Napoli. So, okay, $90 million. The reason he wouldn't come to the U.S. is because we wouldn't have paid. No, we weren't going to pay a $90 million transfer, and we're not going to pay him $20 million to play. So what happens the first time Arthur Blank says, all right, I got $20 million. I'm already paying a wide receiver $75 million guaranteed. What's, Joseph Martinez blew out his ACL. Okay, you can say whatever you want and figure this out however you want. I'm going to go after a new striker.
Well,
And who tells me I can't?
I think the big thing is that soccer is so much more of a chemistry-based game. I mean, you're actually seeing it with Man United right now. You can't just throw money at something and hope that it sticks. Like Man United under the guideship ownership management of Ed. I don't know what you want to call it. Under the leadership of Ed Woodward has been trash.
Right.
Absolute trash. That man cares more about selling jerseys than he does about winning games.
I think it was him or somebody on his staff, fairly famously, earlier in the season said something along the lines of, they don't need they don't need fans to come to the game.
They don't.
Because they could fund their entire operation with closed doors games. That it costs them money to have stewards and security and cops. It costs them money on Saturday, or was it Saturday or Sunday that the derby?
Yeah.
That cost the city of Manchester money. Wouldn't it be easier for them if they just sold TV rights?
Yeah, and I mean, is there a discrepancy in the Premier League between the Sky Six and the rest of the league? Yeah, but the rest of the league's catching up. I mean, you're looking at what Brendan Rodgers is doing at Leicester now, and don't get me wrong, Leicester's got plenty of Thai money,
funneling. And that's the thing is, you look at those teams
team
coming up in EPL that are starting to snap at the heels of the Big Six. Is how are they doing it? They're doing it with piles of money.
They're doing it with piles of money, but Leicester, put it this way, Leicester won the league out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then they disappeared for a while. Before they came in, they got promoted, almost got relegated to the point where when they got safe with like one game left, that ownership bought beer and water for everyone who came to that stadium on that final match day when they realized they were safe. The next year they win the league on 5,000 to 1 odds, and then they just disappear for a while. They're an 8th place, maybe 10th place team, but it wasn't until they're still spending money. They're still throwing money at people, but it wasn't until they brought Brendan Rodgers in that they went back to like, okay, now they're second in the league behind Liverpool, and they're fighting for that second spot with Manchester City. And don't get me wrong,
Manchester's playing Champions League next year, and that having disappeared for several years.
Yeah.
But how did they do that? They did that with a pile of money.
But they still had to hire. They were throwing piles of money, but they had to get the right people. And make no mistake about it, Manchester City has so much Emirati oil money that they don't know what to do with it,
and that they are causing international scenes.
Yeah, and that they just got hit with that financial fair play violation. And as an Everton fan, this very much excites me because that means there's a better spot at Europe now. But they're hiring But they're hiring the right people too. They had to convince Pep Guardiola to come there. He didn't just come there because they threw a bunch of money at him. They had to convince him to come there.
Helped convince him.
It certainly helped convince him, but it wasn't like an automatic thing.
But Liverpool was garbage until they started throwing a bunch of money at it.
Yeah, that Liverpool was not doing all too hot until John Henry.
Yeah,
until John Henry came in.
One would assume that the same could be said about the Crunkies and Arsenal, but they are the. Isn't there an old saying about like there's always one thing that disproves it no matter what the situation? Arsenal disproves.
Yeah, the counterexample.
That they are the counterexample of piles of money solve everything. Stan Kroenke doesn't spend any money.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. He's got piles of money. He doesn't spend piles of money.
Instead of buying, instead of spending money on something that the team needed for like their training facility, like a heated field or something, it would cost $1 million. Instead, he bought a $2 million yacht.
Yeah, like it's stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons Alisher Usmanov has kind of sold or taken a step away because he wanted to buy Arsenal.
Yeah,
and basically the rest of the board was like, we're going to go with Kroenke instead, and that always just left a sour taste in his mouth. And now Alisher Usmanov is pulling some wild financial fair play deals with Farhad Moshiri over at Everton. We're basically like, he's not an investor in the team. He's a sponsor of the team.
Yeah.
So if he had actually bought a stake in the team and just started funneling money into it, he would be considered an investor and messing up with their financial fair play. But instead, he is throwing sponsorship after sponsorship at them. and allowing them to be like, well, we're bringing in all of this money, so that means we can spend all of this money now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is a diabolically brilliant scheme.
The same thing, Chelsea attempted to do the same thing. The only problem is they got hit with a transfer ban because they didn't cook the books correctly.
And for me, like this is the intriguing stuff, and part of why I wanted to start the podcast was to really get into the nuts and bolts of the business side of the game.
Yeah.
Because that's something, and I would joke with a lot of fans, like, people don't realize that European soccer is far more free market capitalist
Yeah.
than anything you see in this country
And
from a sporting standpoint.
MLS,
it is straight up socialism over here.
Yeah, MLS is very controlling when it comes to it. You know, they control really how the sponsorships are really set up, and but it is become an arms race. You know, we saw, okay, so Nationwide is breaking a record. Okay, cool.
Dear God, did they come out swinging with that after all the grief that we gave them?
But then I can't remember who it is. Somebody else I think it was Salt Lake or somebody else, just came up with a gigantic deal of their own that they announced on Monday. So it's an arms race, like
as it well should be. Like, you want the teams competing, you want them investing, you want them trying to build better brand. Overall, it is good for the league as a whole when you have.
But what will happen is when the controls are really taken off, to paraphrase a Fallout Boy, hey, 2 in a row that I mentioned Fallout Boy, this won't be a league. It'll be an arms race.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. Like, I
think that'll be dangerous. I think one of the problems that will happen is you will get teams.
You will get teams that won't be able to compete.
Yeah,
and like, put it this way, if they took the reins off now, Columbus is effed.
I don't think they're complete. I think they would survive. I think there are teams that would fall the hell apart. I think Houston would collapse. I think Dallas, despite all of the money they have and despite all of the things that they've done, they had 15,000 people in a 20,000 seat stadium.
I think New England would absolutely be toast.
I think unless they change their business model. That's the bigger thing, is at some point the shackles will come off of these ownership groups, and there will become a top tier and a bottom tier. You will have the EPL where you've got 6-8 teams out of 20 teams that are the top. It's what they tried to deal with in Championship, where they were like, Leeds United cannot have this pile of money come in, and then all of a sudden they buy their way into the Premier League.
The Premier League again.
And that's what they almost did. That's what that whole Leeds United documentary was.
There are certain clubs, and going back to like, Leeds is one of those clubs. They're kind of like Crystal Palace, where like they're not
Championship. They're not Premier.
They're not a Championship. They're not Premier. They're not really a powerhouse club. But the league is better when they are in it. The Premier League is a better league because Crystal Palace and their supporters and that fan base is in it, and they are bringing it every week. Because Crystal Palace is not a team you can sleep on. You have to bring your A game.
Yeah.
If you don't bring your A game, they will beat you. If you bring your A game, there's a pretty good chance you'll win. But if you don't bring your A game, they're going to beat you, and they make you work for it every single week. If they decided to go that route and take the shackles off the league in the MLS now, yeah, you'd probably see a lot of clubs fall by the wayside. But I mean, tell me that New England Revolution is more than a tax shelter for Robert Kraft.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think the league will start putting pressure on some of these teams the same way they did Columbus. Columbus just dealt with it differently. They blew up the model. They pushed against the league. The league wanted Columbus to go away, For anybody that was at...
We know, they gave Nashville their colors.
Yeah. Well, anybody that was at the Christmas thing that talked to... I guess you talked to Dr. Pete. And
I may or may not have had a conversation with Dr. Pete, and he may or may not have implied that it was the league that was trying to get the team to change the colors. That may or may not have happened.
And that's one of those things. There are only so many color combinations, and when you get into 36
And
teams
to
or
be fair,
whatever,
Nashville's other color is navy blue.
right?
They are trying to do the same thing that Pittsburgh is doing with their where all their teams have the same
Yeah,
color scheme.
and there are people that have asked for years why the Crew is not scarlet and gray, and my response is
One, ew.
yeah, well, my response is it gives a better identity. And also, in 1994 and 1996, there's only so many teams, and the New England Revolution was going to be red, white, and blue because they're the Revolution. What's a construction crew? What's their colors? It's black and yellow or orange. Okay, do you want a black and orange team? It looks like a pumpkin. Don't do that.
Yeah, Cincinnati Bengals fans. But we're the league. This all of this is stemming from MLS 25. Like the fact that like we were both there when this first became a thing, and it is weird to look back on it and see how this league really has grown. And they're almost there. They're almost like a big kid league. They're almost there.
I
And you're starting to. We are in our. That's not true. We are in our adolescence. And
Yeah.
what do adolescent children do? They fight. They argue back. They try to make their point. They don't always make their point the best way, but they know what they're trying to say. But it just doesn't quite come out correctly. And that this league is in its adolescence at 25. And but I think you're about to see, and I think Michael Ariza said this. I think Chicharito has alluded to this as well. Is your start players are going to want to start coming here. Michael Ariza, who's Uganda, was like, honestly, like a lot of European players, particularly African players, are just going to want to come here because they don't want to deal with the racism.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Mexicans are starting to realize, like, oh, a lot of these Americans, like, they've got money.
Yeah, you're not going to get, I can never remember which player it is, and it's kind of an old story that somebody got paid in jewelry. That there was that some team couldn't, they were hiding how much they were paying their star player, so he got paid in jewels, like loose jewels and jewelry at a jeweler. The team was paying for it, but like when you show up and you've got a $20,000 watch on, and you're like, hey, you're only making 35,000 a week. How'd you pay for a $20,000 watch?
Don't worry
Oh,
about it.
yeah, don't worry about it. And some of these Mexican teams, when the cartel teams started disappearing and the Traficante teams started disappearing in Colombia, you get into a situation where you're like, okay, who's paying for this? There's the women's teams. Oh my God, the Mexican Women's League is one of those situations where like you're living with a family. Okay, maybe you get $5,000 a week, but you're living with somebody and you can't go out and you're stuck in this compound or you're stuck doing this and that. So you're going to have a situation where, yeah, they'll come to America because they have to the U.S. because they have a better opportunity of getting paid every week, or their kids not getting kidnapped by away supporters in Argentina.
That's a big one, actually.
That is why I guess Guillermo never let anybody babysit his kids for the first like year he lived in Columbus, is because there was when he was in Argentina, there was always the threat that like local gangs would kidnap his kids.
Yeah, and you're going to see this league slowly start to bring in more and more talent as some of these handcuffs start to come off of these teams because at the end of the day,
I just want to see a team to bring in Balotelli.
yeah, I mean I think it'll happen. He's dealt with so much
But the
BS
amount of
and
money that will be required to
racism
bring
that has
him
been
in.
thrown at him. Oh yeah, it's going to cost somebody a good chunk of change, but I don't think it's going to take any more convincing than a good chunk of change. Like he'll look at an MLS team and a European continental team throwing in the same amount of money at him and goes, I'm not going to deal with the BS that I deal with over here.
Yeah.
I can go over there and be a conquering hero and still make the same amount of money. Ultimately, that's what it is for all these guys. It's money.
Yeah.
And if America is, if nothing else, always open for business. if nothing else, this country and these people, we are always open for business. We are always willing to spend the money.
And that's actually one of the things that's so interesting about the Crew
Unless it's
lineup.
healthcare, but that's another story for another time.
But like you look at the Crew lineup, you look at where some of these players are coming from. They're
the only Americans in our starting lineup are Darlington and Giassi.
Right, and they're from, admittedly they're from very specific centers. Jassi's from Huntington, and Darlington's from Lakewood, and came up in the Olympic program and all that stuff that, you expect a Midwestern kid who plays soccer to do. But you look at the other places they're coming from. They're coming from Brazil, but it's not a big Brazil team. It's not Flamengo that Artur came from. They're coming from Costa Rica. The Costa Rican league is good, but it is very top heavy. Yeah, where you've got like Saprissa is buying other players.
The MLS is becoming you can either call it the stopping ground or the proving ground for South and Central America on the way to Europe.
Right.
That's what they're becoming.
And that could be, if that's our identity, let's embrace it.
I think we should. I think that's absolutely what we should be doing. And the future of the league,
maybe it's not in $100 million players. Maybe it's in $10 million.
But the future of the league, if nothing else, is going to be interesting. And that is all the time we have today for here at Crew Corner, episode 6. So I will be at Endeavor on Saturday night at 10 o'clock. For those of you who want to join and hang out and watch the Crew away match take on the Sounders. Are you coming, or do you have packing?
I have to work.
More work, and I'm sure you got more moving stuff that you got to deal with now. So I will be there. Stop out, say hi. It's going to be another fun year, and we're going to learn a lot more about this team on Saturday. So for Crew Corner, my name is Matt.
And I'm AJ.
And we'll see you in the next video.